There's something incredibly noble about the games that Yacht Club Games has made. I don't think there are any other companies that have made games of this caliber that instantly give you the immense rush of nostalgia that picking up a classic SNES or Game Boy game might. Mina the Hollower is of course no different. I think a lot of people had really high expectations for Mina the Hollower, due in no small part to the success and acclaim of Yacht Club's first game, Shovel Knight. However, I am part of the small group of people that has never actually played Shovel Knight. I have seen bits and pieces of it over the years, and I actually have a copy of it just sitting on my shelf, like literally right there, but I've just never actually gotten around to playing it. So I wouldn't say that I was extremely hyped for Mina the Hollower's release, but it was certainly on my radar. So, when it came out earlier this month, I decided to give it a go. Mina the Hollower is a lot of things, and that is both a good and a bad thing. It's an homage to the classics, but with more modern bells and whistles. But sometimes those bells and whistles actually feel like they hold the game back. I'll explain what that means, but let me tell you about the game first, for those who are unaware. Styled after classic Game Boy titles and drawing inspiration from games like Castlevania, in Mina the Hollower you play as Mina, who returns to Tenebrous Isle after learning that the spark generators that she invented to help power the island have stopped working. The story felt kind of predictable to me, at least in terms of the main story beats, but it isn't necessarily bad, just kind of formulaic. Although the payoff and ending weren't exactly what I had anticipated, I think where the game really shines though is in the individual characters. There are so many different characters that you can meet, even just a single time in your journey, who have lines of dialogue that were absolutely hilarious or interesting. It's a good excuse to just talk to everyone and hear what they have to say. Mina feels like playing a classic handheld adventure game, which is great, and it's done incredibly well, with the platforming and combat feeling extremely crisp and responsive, which I would say is extremely important, especially in a title where depth perception can sometimes cause some slip-ups. In a similar vein to games like Hollow Knight, I really appreciate the amount of customization the game has to offer. First off, there are 5 weapons you can choose from, each with their own upgrades. Then there are sidearms, which are other tools including throwing knives, bombs, and the like, which are found hidden throughout the game. And then there are also 60 trinkets you can find throughout your journey. The trinkets modify your playstyle in different ways, including simple things like making your attacks do more damage, or more advanced things like summoning fireballs whenever you get hit. But be careful, because with great power comes great responsibility. Those fireballs will hit you as well as your enemies. I tended to lean into my favorite archetype, which is Summoner, using basically any trinket that gave me summons, either after doing damage or taking damage, and I had a lot of fun with it. But there is also a lot of flexibility, so I think other players will definitely be able to find something that is more their niche. With my build, I felt like I personally destroyed most enemies and bosses in the game really easily, sometimes almost comically so. But I also appreciate that there's enough variety in the boss designs that I actually needed to switch up my build sometimes to help with certain obstacles, and the game makes it really easy to switch things up as needed, especially right before boss fights. I think for me, my absolute favorite part of Mina the Hollower though was the music. It's an absolutely amazing showcase of chiptune tracks composed by Jake Kaufman that really helps set the tone of the world. Plus, they're the kind of tracks that I can absolutely see myself listening to while not playing the game. Kaufman also composed Shovel Knight, whose soundtrack I adore even though I haven't played the game. Now, I briefly alluded to it earlier, but Mina the Hollower has a lot going on. Sometimes it is really good and it works well. For example, each of the main areas have their own mechanics to learn that are pretty much specific to that area. For the most part, they're fun and a nice layer of challenge. But on the other hand, sometimes an area has too much going on. For me, the prime example of this is Septemberg, which is aesthetically my favorite area in the game. I absolutely love the autumnal vibe, but it's also an area that I look forward to never playing again. In Septemberg alone, there is a wind mechanic that affects movement, a lightning mechanic that requires you to stay near lightning rods lest you get struck, and also a boss chase mechanic where the big boss of the area, who is invulnerable, appears and chases you through the area. Sometimes all 3 of those mechanics will overlap, and it's just too much to deal with. Sometimes simplicity is key, and I wish that Mina took more advantage of that. I'm fine if they want to make challenge rooms that make use of multiple mechanics all at the same time. It could be a fun experience in moderation, but when taken all at once, it's just too much. Thankfully, most other areas don't do anything quite as obnoxious, and they play around with one or maybe two different mechanics, and they feel genuinely good to go through. I especially enjoyed the platforming sections of Bone Beach and Astral Ori, both of which have some of the most fun and unique boss designs that I have seen in a long time. When I review games, I tend to think about what I want to say while I'm playing. Sadly, I can't always turn that reviewer part of my brain off, but I think all of my thoughts really came together for me with the game's final area, which takes the idea of doing too much to the extreme. I'm not going to spoil specifics for those who want to play through the experience for themselves, but typically, at least in my opinion, a good final level will revisit ideas seen throughout the game and bring them together to show you how much you've grown throughout the whole experience. My main problem is that the final area revisits ideas and then continues to add more and more and more, and it makes the final level feel like an absolute slog to get through because of it. Including an auto-scroller section, the only one in the game as far as I can remember, that was just miserable to play, with an extremely long run back every time I died. In its best moments, Mina the Hollower is a delightful send-up to the classic adventure games, but at its worst, it can feel like a rage-inducing nightmare, with little buffer in between those. I don't want to make it seem like I didn't like the game. I did like it, a lot in fact. I just think certain aspects hold it back from being great. One of the things that I love about classic games is that they were limited by what they could reasonably fit onto a cartridge or disc. But with modern convenience, devs have the abilities to add to their heart's content, and I think it takes a strong will to reel it in and say, why do we need all this? I felt the same way about Hollow Knight Silksong, a game that I didn't ever review, but I probably will once I get all my feelings together about that one. Overall, I think that Mina the Hollower is a solid game. It's a fun exploration of a classic genre with some fun new ideas, and some ideas that probably should have ended up on the cutting room floor. Priced at $20, I will say the game is certainly worth your time and money, and I think it would still be worth it even at a higher price point. It took me about 12 hours to beat the game, but there is still so much more that I could do. Tons of side challenges to complete, a new game plus with modifiers, and if it's following the footsteps of Shovel Knight, I assume there will also be DLC in the future. And I'm content enough with the base experience to at least check that out once it does come. If you go into the experience looking for a classic action-adventure game, I think you'll leave happy, if not also a little angry at some of the design elements. But you will be satisfied, and at the end of the day, I think that is what matters most. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video and are curious about some of my other reviews, they are all on my YouTube channel. You can also find my reviews in a written form over on my website, which is linked down below in the description. If you want to see me live, I stream usually a couple times a week over on Twitch, which is also linked below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video, and peace out. I'll catch you all on the flip side.